All right, let's just dive right into this explainer and decode the actual master blueprint that Frederick Terman used to build the modern tech ecosystem. Back in the early 20th century, the Santa Clara Valley was literally known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. We're talking pristine orchards here, prunes, apricots, walnuts, as far as the eye could see. Yet somehow, from that exact same farming soil, the most powerful tech empire in human history was engineered. So today, we're going to look at exactly how one academic mastermind managed to trap the country's absolute brightest students on the West Coast to build what we now know as Silicon Valley.
First, we really need to understand the core problem he was facing, which was a massive, systemic brain drain. Out on the West Coast, the economy was heavily resource extractive. We're talking agriculture, logging, mining. There were basically zero local corporations capable of employing advanced technical talent. Because of that, every single spring, Stanford's elite engineering graduates, literally the sharpest analytical minds in the country, were just systematically exported. They'd hop on transcontinental trains to go take lifetime jobs at East Coast industrial monopolies, giants like General Electric, AT&T, and Westinghouse. California was essentially stuck in this colonial economic loop, permanently exporting its raw brain power.
So the obvious question is, how do you actually stop an intellectual export? Well, this is the exact puzzle that Stanford engineering dean Frederick Terman decided he was going to solve. He realized that if Stanford ever wanted to achieve true world-class standing, it just couldn't keep acting as a passive exporter of raw intellect. Terman figured out that the ultimate destiny of a region isn't about its physical geography or its weather. It's actually about its capacity to anchor and commercialize the output of its human intellect. He knew he needed a strategy to aggressively intercept that brain drain right at the source. And here is our strategic roadmap to decode Terman's master blueprint. We're going to quickly cover the initial problem, the major mindset shift he enforced, the brilliant real estate trap he invented, the talent lock that guaranteed dominance, and finally, how all of this connects to the modern AI legacy. So, let's start with phase one, the mindset shift, and how he went about smashing the traditional ivory tower. Now, back in those days, elite universities operated as true, literal ivory towers. Academic prestige meant staying completely detached from the transactional marketplace. Pure theory was everything. The idea of aligning an academic lab with a commercial business, that was viewed with deep skepticism, maybe even moral condemnation. But Terman, he completely smashed that dogma. He totally transformed the classroom into an open-air startup incubator. He saw that Stanford's geographic isolation was actually a massive strategic advantage. While the East Coast schools were boxed in by these huge, slow-moving corporate conglomerates, Santa Clara Valley was a total blank canvas. So, instead of pure theory, he pushed hard for proprietary commercial IP. Instead of acting as detached monks of science, he turned his faculty into corporate advisory catalysts. And most crucially, he stopped training institutional employees and started training equity-holding founders. He was literally weaponizing pure science into commercial enterprise. He worked to instill this near-militaristic ethos in his students, and this quote really captures it perfectly. He told them, "Do not go east to become a submissive cog in someone else's corporate monopoly. Stay here in California and build your own industrial empire." He was establishing this incredibly powerful localized gravity well. The whole goal was to trap Stanford talent right outside its own gates by shifting the engineering curriculum away from just passively absorbing textbooks and towards active proprietary project design. Moving on to Section 2. The garage seating, and the early incubation of Hewlett and Packard. Terman physically tested this theory in the 1930s by heavily guiding two of his star graduate students, William Hewlett, who was this absolute circuit design wizard, and David Packard, a master craftsman. Now, Packard had actually already succumbed to the brain drain. He'd taken a safe, secure job at General Electric out in New York. But Terman engineered his return to the West Coast by securing him a specialized fellowship. And Terman didn't just offer friendly academic advice here. He basically acted as their co-founder, their VC, and their lead strategist. He essentially commanded them to form a partnership and even helped them lock down a rental property at 367 Addison Avenue. And when Hewlett designed a revolutionary audio oscillator, which brilliantly used a simple light bulb to stabilize the circuit, Terman tapped into his network. He got Walt Disney Studios to buy 8 of these units to calibrate the sound systems for the movie Fantasia. He even went so far as to personally arrange a commercial bank loan for exactly $1,000. That cash funded Hewlett and Packard's initial manufacturing equipment right inside that famous 12 by 18-foot wooden garage. With just $1,000 and some incredibly intense mentorship, Terman proved to young engineers that immense wealth and global industrial power could absolutely be engineered right there from the dirt of the peninsula. That brings us to Section 3, the real estate trap, and the invention of the Stanford Industrial Park.
Post-World War II, you had this massive influx of GI Bill students, and this crashed right into a major financial crisis at Stanford. The university had this incredible density of technical talent, sure, but it was dangerously cash poor. Worse, an 1885 legal covenant strictly forbade the sale of its 8,000 acres of land. So what does Terman do? He executes a stroke of absolute macroeconomic genius. He turns a legal restriction into the ultimate spatial trap. Working alongside University President Wallace Stirling, he championed the creation of the Stanford Industrial Park in 1951. The logic was simple. If we can't legally sell the land, we'll lease it out on 99-year terms. But here was the catch, the masterstroke really. Those leases were exclusively reserved for high-tech companies that were going to integrate directly with Stanford's own research and talent pipeline.
By strategically pulling these massive anchor tenants directly onto the campus, companies like Varian Associates, Hewlett-Packard, Eastman Kodak, General Electric, and Lockheed, he achieved a total physical fusion of academia and industry. Think about it. A brilliant electronics grad no longer had to move to New York to find a cutting-edge lab. They could literally walk out of a Stanford seminar, cross an open lawn, and instantly step right into a world-class corporate research facility. The intellectual capital was captured and monetized locally, immediately.
Let's look at Section 4, the Talent Lock and the Honors Cooperative Program.
So, to completely halt those aggressive talent raids from mature East Coast giants who were throwing massive salaries around, Terman needed a recruitment weapon that couldn't be copied. Enter the Honors Cooperative Program, established in 1954. Here's how it worked. A tiny, scrappy local startup could look at a top-tier MIT graduate and say, look, we can't match an East Coast corporate salary, but if you come work for us, we legally guarantee that you will earn a Stanford master's or PhD part-time, and we will fully fund it. The startup would pay Stanford double the normal tuition, which heavily subsidized the university's labs, while the brilliant engineer remained embedded in the local startup for years. It completely reversed the brain drain. Stanford was now systematically draining the rest of the world's top talent and permanently locking it into their own local network.
Finally, Section 5, the future. Tracing this legacy from 1951 all the way to modern Phase 7 AI. Let's connect the dots here. Let's trace how this 1950s real estate and tuition strategy directly relates to the smartphones in your pocket right now and the AI that's shaping our future. The historical trajectory from Terman's anti-brain drain playbook to contemporary Phase 7 artificial intelligence is completely unbroken. Sure, the aesthetics have evolved from glowing vacuum tubes to massive deep learning algorithms, but the core structural relationship between academic capital, talent containment, and physical space, it remains exactly the same. In the 90s, when founders were spinning up Yahoo or Google, they were running Terman's exact playbook. They used Stanford's tech licensing to anchor their startups right inside the local ecosystem, completely refusing to sell out to the established East Coast media combines. Now, while modern AI has technically shifted geographically north into a hyperdense urban grid, it's still being driven by that exact same need for talent containment and academic proximity that Terman engineered. Today's AI wave has essentially relocated its brain trust out of the suburban corporate parks of the South Bay and into the hyperdense, highly walkable neighborhoods of San Francisco. We're talking places like the Mission District and Potrero Hill, which folks are now literally calling Cerebral Valley. Modern engineers might be rejecting car-dependent suburbia, but they are demanding that exact same density where academic research, venture capital, and hacker house culture all exist in immediate physical proximity to each other.
75 years later, the intellectual reactor core remains firmly planted at Stanford. The sale pipeline is completely unbroken. Today, generative AI giants like OpenAI and Anthropic essentially treat the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory as their own private talent fountain. They pull the absolute top machine learning researchers straight off the campus and drop them directly into these dense urban development warehouses. The region's global dominance still depends entirely on containing that elite intellect within the local ecosystem.
Terman proved once and for all that a region's destiny is not dictated by the natural resources buried beneath the dirt. Global cognitive power actually belongs to those who have the audacity to freeze brilliant talent into the local soil. It's about forging the invisible abstractions of science into the permanent corporate architecture of our civilization. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. So, as we look at the incredible AI monopolies of today, you really have to ask yourself, who is currently out there building the invisible traps that will capture the talent of tomorrow?